The price of silver has been on a really wild ride recently, and that's causing a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, and it's bringing new people into this market who maybe have never been here before. But when you're encountering something for the first time, you're inevitably going to encounter different shapes, different forms, different words and terms that you may not understand. So this video is going to be an introduction to physical silver. A great idea if you've never encountered these items before. We're going to talk about some of the most often encountered terms that are used in the silver industry, and we're going to talk about some of the most commonly encountered forms of silver that you can buy, and we'll talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of them. We're going to take this nice and slow, so if you are brand new to this, you're going to be able to figure out all of these things. You'll finally understand what we're talking about if you've seen it online or at a local store. You'll understand all of these terms and all of these beautiful pieces of silver that you see here before you. By the end of this video, you will understand all of the different attributes about them, and you'll be armed with some information to make your physical precious metal buying experience much more rewarding. If you're new to the channel, I want to thank you for spending some time with me. My name is Dub C, and I really appreciate you spending time, especially if you are brand new to this market, because it can be a little bit overwhelming, but by the end of this video, you'll feel a lot more comfortable about this. If you're one of my returning subscribers, you get to see some pretty interesting pieces of silver, but I also am encouraging you to leave some information, some tips down below to people who are brand new to this, because it can be overwhelming. If we share some knowledge with them, their experiences are going to be much better, and we're going to build our community. So I'm asking you to leave comments and tips down below, and everybody read those comments and tips and take that information to heart. It's a great way to learn from others within this hobby, this industry, this investment sphere. I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. That is, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I like to begin my videos with a couple of concepts that we can kind of pull back into the subject. This is going to be particularly important, especially if you are brand new to this. I'm going to hit you with 2 or 3 concepts at the start, but then I'll talk about some of these concepts as we start to unfold all of these pieces in front of you. The first concept I wanted to hit you with is a very important concept, and that is the idea of a premium. What is a premium? For the sake of this video, we're going to set a theoretical price of $45 United States currency, $45 per troy ounce. Troy ounce is simply a unit of measurement. We'll talk about that in a moment too. If you were to walk into a local coin shop and you would ask them if you can buy a troy ounce of silver for $45, that theoretical price range, keep in mind that silver is a globally traded commodity, which means the prices rise and fall all of the time. But just for the sake of this illustration, let's say that it's $45 per ounce. Could you walk into that shop and buy an ounce of silver for $45? The answer is probably not. That shopkeeper needs to make a little bit of profit. They have an inventory to take care of. They've got lights to keep on. They have rent. They may have employees. The refineries who actually produce this material often need to make some money on it, and they pass that cost on to the person that's selling it to you. So the idea of a premium is the amount that you have to pay over and above the value of the actual silver contained within whatever it is that you're buying. It's a little counterintuitive. The price of a premium depends on what type of silver you're buying. It also depends on the market where you're located, whether you're buying online or at a small local shop. It depends on the supply and demand, how urgently people need these particular pieces, but don't let that throw you off. The idea of a premium is actually pretty easy to understand. We'll talk about the premiums for each of these pieces as we go forward. I'll talk about non-circulating legal tender coins. We'll talk about silver bars. We'll talk about silver rounds, and we'll talk about 90% silver vintage coins. So these are the most commonly encountered items. Each of them has different premiums depending on which one you're buying at what time. If you walked into a local shop and you wanted to buy an ounce of silver, the premium may be as much as $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 or even more dollars per troy ounce. depending on what it is that you're buying. So that's the idea of a premium. And I'll talk about premiums for all of these items as we go through them very slowly from left to right. The other idea I wanted to bounce off of you is one that I've just mentioned, that is the concept of a troy ounce. In the West, specifically in the United States of America, we tend to weigh our precious metals in a system of weights called troy ounces. I don't want to bog you down with a really strong definition of this. The important thing to understand is that they weigh a little bit more than the average ounces that we're used to using. But the nice thing about troy ounces is that almost all of these pieces are weighed in troy ounces, and the price of silver that you're going to find on online stores is almost always given in troy ounces. So it really begins to be a very easy to understand concept. If you've never heard of it before, just understand that that is the weight that we use when describing how much a precious metal item weighs. Troy ounce. We'll talk about that as we go a little bit further into it. So let's talk about these pieces from left to right. These pieces are some of the most popular in the United States of America. What I'm holding here is a United States of America silver eagle. A lot of mints around the world, going back several decades, started making 1 troy ounce pure silver coins for consumers. And this became one of the most popular ways in the United States of America and around the world to own 1 troy ounce of pure silver. You can see that it actually says 1 ounce fine silver right there. The word fine is interchangeable with pure. So when we talk about pure silver, let's just take a short aside. We're generally talking about 3/9 fine silver. This is a common term that you will hear online and also in your local shops. What do we mean by 3/9 fine? 99.9% pure silver is the industry standard. When we say pure silver, that's what we mean. Anything that is at least 3/9 fine, 999 silver, is considered to be pure silver. We use the expression 3/9 or 3/9 fine because it rolls off the tongue, it's easier to say, and it kind of rhymes. But what it really comes down to is 99.9% pure, or you can look at it in terms of its amount of pure silver per thousands. In this case, it would be 999 parts per thousand pure silver. 999 silver, 0.999 silver, 99.9% silver, 3/9 fine. It all means the same thing. As long as this item is 3/9 fine at least, it is considered pure silver in the industry standard. These 1 ounce silver coins are 1 troy ounce of 3/9 fine silver. And lots of sovereign countries around the world put out these pieces. We've got an example here from Mexico. This is a Mexican Libertad. This is a very popular piece. And you can see that they too are using that millesimal fineness, that 0.999, and it's 1 ounce of pure silver. In Spanish, 1 onza plata pura. So this is an example of a sovereign modern bullion coin, sometimes called a non-circulating legal tender. I'll touch on that in just a moment. This is a very popular piece from Canada. This is a Canadian silver maple leaf. It also says fine silver 1 ounce. So you can see that all of these pieces are 1 troy ounce of pure silver. There's a very popular one called the Philharmonic that is made in Austria. Great Britain has a very popular one called the Britannia. And there are lots of other pieces made by countries around the world for people who just want to own 1 troy ounce of pure silver. It's a very easy to understand, logical way to stack precious metals. There are advantages to these non-circulating legal tender coins. Why do I call them non-circulating legal tender? This is a little bit more of a nuanced subject, but you saw when I turned this piece over that it was denominated in $1. You see the $1 down there? Now, if we talked before about silver being $45 a troy ounce, and each one of these contains exactly 1 troy ounce of 3/9 fine pure silver, why would it have the dollar face value? You would clearly never spend this for $1 because the silver alone is worth somewhere around $45. It has to do with tax implications, it has to do with accounting. You can check with your tax attorney, your lawyers. Depends on the municipality where you are. There are also stricter laws for counterfeiting currency versus counterfeiting a pair of jeans. So there are lots of reasons that these pieces would have a face value. What it comes down to is that they are a legal tender coin. You would just never spend them for their silver content. I know it's a little bit of a strange concept. The advantages to these pieces is that they are very well known. Every dealer in the United States of America is going to know what a silver eagle is. Every dealer in Great Britain is going to know what a silver Britannia is. And the nice thing about them is that if there are a couple of dozens of these that are really popular, depending on where you are in the world, your dealers will understand what each of them is. They will know them immediately. They are recognizable, and there is some value to have something that is immediately recognizable and understood. They are easy to understand, easy to figure out. 1 troy ounce of pure silver. If silver is trading at $45 per ounce, you know that each one of these contains exactly 1 troy ounce of pure silver. It's very easy to calculate how much your silver is worth. There are some disadvantages. The fact that these have so many different things built into them, the anti-counterfeit, the face value, the recognition, the dates, some people do collect these pieces, means that they have a higher premium than many other forms of precious metals. In fact, these have some of the highest premiums of all of the vehicles that are out there. So if our theoretical $45 per troy ounce silver is accurate, these pieces may cost you as much as $3 or $4 or maybe even $5 per troy ounce more than the silver content. So they could cost you $47, $48, even more money than that per vehicle, per example of these silver eagles, these silver libertads, the silver maple leafs. So they have a very high premium. This is probably the biggest disadvantage to them, and sometimes you can recoup some of that money if your dealer needs to buy these. They may actually pay you a little bit more than the spot price, but very rarely will it be enough to recoup the entire amount. So if you want to think of it in kind of broad terms, the price of silver has to go up enough to eclipse that premium that you just paid. Otherwise, you're kind of losing money by putting it into these pieces. If you want to hold for the long term, if this isn't something that you're planning on selling at any time in the future, these are a very attractive option. They have a lot of benefits, but keep in mind those premiums a little bit of a disadvantage. Again, you'll see advantages and disadvantages to each of these, and it's really up to you to decide which one is the right thing for you to be buying. The next vehicle that I want to talk about are the silver bars. Silver bar is a very sexy, kind of historically interesting way to own treasure, it almost seems like. Silver bars come in all shapes and sizes. They are made by private companies, most of the time private refineries. And there are 4 or 5 major refineries in the United States of America who make silver bars. Costco has been incredibly instrumental in introducing a whole bunch of new people to the idea of precious metals because Costco sells silver also. One of the silver vehicles that they sell is a 10-ounce silver bar by PAMP. That looks very similar to this 10-ounce silver bar. It's a one bar of 10 ounces, 10 troy ounces of silver. You'll see that it comes in a vinyl package. They are 3/9 fine, so this is pure silver. A very easy to understand idea. There are benefits to silver bars. The 1 troy ounce silver bars, we don't see them quite as often anymore. This is an example, and you can see this one actually says 1 troy ounce and 999 silver on it. There's that 3/9 fine that we'll see over and over again. Advantages and disadvantages to silver bars. They are consistent. It's really easy to buy a stack of 10-ounce silver bars, put them in your safe, and forget about it. That's an easy thing to do, and that can't be understated. There is some benefit in having a very systematic approach, especially when it comes to something like dollar cost averaging. I'll talk about that in just a moment. They are really popular. The 10-ounce version seems to be kind of the more popular weight right now, the 10 troy ounce silver bars. You're looking at a kilogram silver bar, and a kilogram is 1,000 grams. A gram is another weight system. We don't use it that much in the United States. To give you an idea, This is a 1 gram silver bar. This is made by a manufacturer called Valcambi, a very popular bar maker. But you can see just how tiny 1 gram is. So this, at a kilogram, is 1,000 of those little bars of silver. It's a nice size silver bar. They are incredibly popular in places like the UK and parts of Asia and Europe right now. But we just don't see them that often in the United States. The 10-ounce silver bar seems to be a little bit more of the standard. So what are the advantages? We talked before about how high the premiums can be on these non-circulating legal tender modern bullion coins. For a silver bar, the premiums tend to be much lower. Generally speaking, the larger the size of the bar, the lower the premium per troy ounce. And it's only logical. It's easier for a manufacturer to make one thing that weighs 100 ounces. And this is an example of a 100-ounce silver bar. You can see just how big this piece is. To make one piece that weighs 100 ounces versus 100 little tiny pieces that weigh 1 ounce apiece. There is a little bit of consistency. It's easier for them to do this. So by the same token, the premium per troy ounce tends to be smaller. If the premiums on these pieces is $4 or $5 per ounce, the premium on a 10-ounce bar of silver may be as low as maybe $2 or $3 per troy ounce. So the premium is lower. That means you're buying more silver with your dollars. There are disadvantages. One of the key disadvantages that I think of when I'm talking about silver bars is their indivisibility. It's a big fancy word. It really just means that if you have 1-ounce silver coins or 1-ounce silver bars and you find yourself in a position where for some reason you need to access some of the cash contained within your silver, you can sell exactly the amount that you need to in order to buy whatever it is that you're looking to buy. If you have a 10-ounce bar or a kilogram bar or a 100-ounce bar like the one I showed a moment ago, you must necessarily sell the entire silver bar, even the ounces that you don't need to sell. And what happens if the price of silver has dropped since you bought your silver? You find yourself in a position where you need to sell every ounce at a loss, and that's a disadvantage. One of the nice things about these pieces is that they are exactly 1 troy ounce. You can sell the incremental silver that you need to access that cash. Not quite as easy with the silver bars. So probably the least, the most disadvantage that you can find with a silver bar is that indivisibility. They also don't have much of a collector base when we're talking about modern silver bars. There are exceptions if you like vintage silver bars. Some people do collect them. I do myself, and I have plenty of videos on my channel where I talk about the beauty, the history, the significance of vintage silver bars. But as a new silver buyer, we're just looking at these pieces that you would find at a local coin shop or a retailer like Costco. Silver bars, they're an interesting option. Consider the silver bar. It's a great way to buy. The next item I want to talk about is the silver round. And this seems to be very confusing to people who are brand new to the market. So I'm going to take this especially slow. We talked about these 1-ounce silver bullion coins that are made by a sovereign country, but there are also refineries who make 1-ounce silver bullion vehicles that are not coins. I mentioned that the silver bar can be a very difficult thing to make. A 1-ounce silver bar is kind of a costly thing to make. So in order to make something that's a little bit less expensive, you'll find a lot of refineries make a 1-ounce silver medallion. They are very coin-like, but these are not actual coins. This is just a simple way to make 1 troy ounce of pure silver, and it's very easy to understand. 1 troy ounce, 999 silver. So these have been popular for decades. They're made by lots of different manufacturers. Many different refineries make them. They come in all sorts of beautiful designs, some more attractive than others. One of the things that throws people off when they first encounter these, besides the fact that they look so much like a coin, right? This is about the size of an American silver dollar, is that they often reincorporate classic American coin designs, and that doesn't help the situation. But what they essentially represent is 1 troy ounce of silver with one of the lowest premiums that you're going to find. You can see this one says 1 troy ounce, 999 plus silver. The lowest premiums of many of the silver vehicles that you'll find. We talked about the silver coins made by a sovereign country having that premium of $4 or $5 a piece, sometimes even more than that. The silver bars, maybe $2 or $3 per troy ounce. The silver rounds can often be picked up for maybe $1 or $1.50 per troy ounce premium. And that's because they are not quite as desirable as the silver coins made by a country because they are made by a private company. They don't have a face value. They're not maybe quite as protected against counterfeiting and some of the other things that we talked about that make the silver coins more desirable. So if you're really just looking for an easy, incremental, low premium way to buy silver, the silver round, and they're just simply called a round, generically that's just what we call them because they're round, these silver round coin-like medallions of 3/9 fine silver, one of the least expensive ways to buy silver that you can easily encounter. Almost every coin shop that buys and sells precious metals is going to have a lot of these silver rounds. I have a video about vintage silver rounds because some people do collect the older pieces. You'll find that linked below in a video about the 50-year club of silver rounds. But for our discussion here today, one of, if not the least expensive way to buy 3/9 fine silver compared to these other popular options. Next to the silver rounds, we have probably the most nuanced way to buy silver. And if you need to stop here, if these 3 different options are good enough for you, nothing wrong with that. Now you're at least armed with that information. When you walk into a coin shop, you'll know what you're looking for. You can speak the same jargon that they're speaking behind the counter. There's no mystery to these pieces. Silver coins, silver bars, or silver rounds. Easy to understand, generally denominated in 1 troy ounce of 3/9 fine silver. Full stop. That's a great place to stop this video. But if you have interest in a little bit more nuanced pieces, let's talk about what we call 90%. Sometimes it's referred to as constitutional, sometimes it's talked about as being junk silver. And what it really amounts to in the United States of America, and most countries have a very similar form of silver to what you're looking at here, is that before 1965, our dimes, our quarters, our half dollars, and even our silver dollars, this is an example of a United States silver dollar, we stopped making those in 1935, but all of these pieces were made out of a 90% silver, 10% copper alloy. And we alloyed copper because it made these pieces more durable. So every single dime, quarter, half dollar, and silver dollar made before 1965 is made out of this 90% silver alloy. And there are millions and millions and millions of these pieces still out here. They are bought and sold in coin tubes. They are bought and sold in bags of a $500 face value or $1,000 face value. They are very easy to find. They have lots of different advantages and disadvantages, and I'll talk about them here. If you want to go with me a little bit further on this journey, I find 90% to be a very interesting way to buy silver. It is made by a sovereign country. In this case, it's made by the United States of America, arguably the largest mint and refiner the world has ever seen, the United States Mint. Their pieces have really good standards. They are trusted and known throughout history. They have a face value. The silver dollar has a face value, the half dollar, the quarter, the dime. They do have that face value. You are less likely to see counterfeited silver dimes than you are to see any of these pieces. They have a very, very low premium right now. Now, premiums rise and fall depending on demand, just like anything. But right now, as I'm filming, 90% silver coins have some of the lowest premiums you're going to encounter, often even lower than the rounds that we just talked about. They are infinitely incremental in their divisibility, right? We talked about the idea of 1 troy ounce of silver, 10 troy ounces of silver, and the difficulties associated with accessing that. The nice thing about 90% is that it is very incremental. A silver dollar contains about twice as much silver as a half dollar. A quarter contains, 1/2 of the amount of silver of a half dollar, and so on and so forth. A silver dollar, though, is usually a little bit of a higher premium, so I've left them out of this equation. We're just talking about the silver half dollars, the quarters, and the dimes here. The advantages: incremental, low premium, and there is even some collector potential. Not every single piece, not every single condition of them, but there is fewer and fewer of this 90% silver still out there. So it does have some potential advantages over some of these other pieces that we talked about. Are there disadvantages? Of course there are disadvantages, which is one of the reasons why their premiums are so low. The main disadvantage is that these pieces are not 3/9 fine. Remember, we talked about the industry standard being 99.9% pure silver. These pieces, the half dollar, the quarters, and the dimes, are 90% silver. That's why they're generically called 90% often, 10% copper. So that makes their determining how much silver they contain a little bit more difficult. You've got to do a little bit of math. They are also not easily measured in 1 troy ounce increments. Again, that's one of the disadvantages of 90%. A silver dollar contains 0.77 of a troy ounce of silver, not quite a full troy ounce, a little bit more than 3/4 of a troy ounce of silver. And by the same token, the silver half dollar, 0.3617 of a troy ounce, the silver quarter, 0.1808, and a silver dime, 0.072. So you can see that this is not an easy to manipulate 1 troy ounce amount, and the amount of silver is 90% pure versus the 3/9 fine silver of the other items that we talked about. Because of that, it may be a little bit less liquid. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to buy, a little bit more difficult to sell. The premiums being low is a definite advantage, but all the other things that we talked about can be seen as a disadvantage. If you want to take a really deep dive into 90% constitutional junk silver, I made a video recently called Junk Silver is Not Stupid. I'll put a link to that down below where I list all of the different positive attributes that I see when it comes to junk silver. But again, as a new buyer of silver, it may be a better idea to stick to these more understandable, easy to manipulate 1 troy ounce, 3/9 fine silver items that we've talked about. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I would give you a few of my thoughts about buying silver for the first time. So these are my tips. Your mileage may vary. Again, check down below to see other people's contents. Number 1, there is no reason to rush into this. I am a big fan of the concept of dollar cost averaging. What does that mean? It means you set aside a very specific dollar amount and you don't deviate from that dollar amount. And then you buy what silver you can at a very specific increment. It could be once a week, it could be once a month. So if you theoretically put $500 every month into the silver market, if the price of silver has skyrocketed well above our theoretical $45 per ounce price, you are limiting your exposure to that higher price by buying less silver with your dollars on that monthly basis. And if the price of silver has plummeted when you make your purchase, you are exposing yourself to that lower price per troy ounce, so you are buying more of the less expensive silver. This is a really easy concept to understand. Check with your accountant, your tax attorney if you have specific questions about this, but I am a big fan of dollar cost averaging. It's what I try to do when it comes to buying silver. It's definitely something to look at. Do some comparative shopping. We talked about the concept of premiums, but remember that premiums fluctuate from dealer to dealer, from person to person, from vehicle to vehicle. So it does you some good to do a little bit of comparison shopping. Don't be afraid to look online. Don't be afraid to call around if you have local shops that sell silver. Try to find the lowest price premium that you can, as long as you're comparing apples to apples. If you're comparing the silver coins to silver bars or silver rounds, make sure that you're talking about the same thing, because those premiums do differ so dramatically from dealer to dealer and from vehicle to vehicle. I think it's okay, especially when you're first starting out, to make a few small purchases of all of these different categories to see which one you like the best. Go to a local dealer, an online retailer, and buy a few of these sovereign bullion pieces. If you want to, stick within one country, or maybe jump around a little bit and buy pieces from a couple of other countries. Find out the piece that you think is most beautiful, most attractive, easiest to understand. Buy a couple of them. There's nothing wrong with dipping your toes in the water before diving head first. Buy a 10-ounce bar from a retailer like Costco. If you're a member and they've got silver bars in stock, it's a really easy way to do it No pressure, no nonsense, a little bit more anonymous if you feel a little bit uncomfortable. The items that Costco sells are absolutely top notch, and I've made an entire series about the various items that Costco sells when it comes to precious metals. I'll put a link to that series down below also. The silver rounds, a little bit more subtle, a little bit more nuanced. Your dealer will probably have a variety of them. My suggestion there, if you want to pick up a few of these, try to find something that's maybe a little bit older. Make sure that it's in really nice condition, something that has an attractive design on it, ideally something that states very clearly that it is 3/9 fine silver and 1 troy ounce. Because when and if it comes time to sell these pieces, it's going to be easier to sell those pieces that state very clearly on them what they are. I think that's a really important tip. Buy from a trusted source. Whether it's an online bullion retailer or if it's a local shop, buy from somebody who knows what they're talking about. This is going to help you up front, but it will also help you in that exit strategy if and when the time ever comes for you to sell. Making sure that you're buying the pieces that are supposed to be what they are, and it makes it that much easier when it comes time to sell. And again, definitely check those comments down below. And I'm going to ask once again my subscribers with a little bit more experience in this field, leave your common tips for the people that are kind of new to this hobby, to this area of stacking. Let them know what they can expect, let them know what you learned from your mistakes, and hopefully we can help them along their way and help them into this wonderful hobby that we have of stacking precious metals. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, once again, I'd love to ask you to subscribe. Go ahead on that the notification button also, because I premiere videos pretty much every Friday evening, and I'm generally there during the premiere, the very first time that these videos are shown, to talk with you in the audience who is watching it for the first time. We have a chat going off to the side. You can ask me questions. I'll make comments while the video is playing, but more important, immediately after those premieres, we almost always go live, and that's a live stream. And a live stream, we open up the floor to anything you want to talk about when it comes to bullion or precious metals or rare coins. We generally stick to about the same topic that we just covered in the video that premiered, but the floor is wide open as long as it deals, somewhat tangentially with coins or precious metals. You can make comments, you can ask questions, you can talk with other people in the community. It's a great way to chat and meet other people in the community. Those live streams are a lot of fun. It's a very fast-paced and exciting way to start the weekend. I really look forward to those live streams. Hopefully you will join me for my next live stream, and the way you find out about that is hit the notification button also. I end my videos by saying, always be learning. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.